Hello.
Tell me again, I'm the chairman of
The Chancellor of Region Security Council.
I was hoping Ferry was going to come. Good morning and welcome to the Wilson Center. This is actually a very loud microphone. I'm Henri, Barkey, the director of the Middle East program here, and we're very fortunate and very honored today to welcome Mr. Masroor Barzani, who's the Chancellor of the Kurdistan Security Council. I think he doesn't need more of an introduction. We have, as you see, a packed room and there's an excellent, so I would like to start as soon as possible so we have time for questions. And thank you again for coming. You're very popular here.
Thank you.
So please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Henri. Good morning, everyone. I thank all of you for coming here, and I certainly thank the Wilson Center for giving me this chance and arranging this gathering. It's an honor for me to speak to you about some of the very, very important issues in our region and about the future of our people and our country. I'm very honored to be speaking at the Wilson Center, which is named after a president that almost a century ago supported the self-determination of all the subjects of the Austrian, Hungarian, Ottoman, and the Russian empires at that time. Our history is full of atrocities, sacrifices, tragic events, deportations, but at the same time, it is also full of sacrifice by our people and heroism and resilience, some of which we have witnessed just recently by our Peshmergas. As you know, in 2014, we literally woke up to one of the biggest problems and threats that we have faced in the recent history, and this is the international terrorism. ISIS, unfortunately, in a very short time, became a full-blown army, and they started attacking Kurdistan. Since then, we have managed, of course, with the support of the US-led coalition, but with the bravery and the sacrifices of our people, and especially our Peshmergas, we've managed to not only stop them, but to push them back and to defeat them. ISIS, when they started at that time, they had the dream of creating what they called it an Islamic State. But today they are on the verge of collapse and defeat. We, since the beginning until now, have liberated more than 30,000 square kilometers by the Peshmergas alone, unfortunately at a very heavy cost. We have lost more than 1,614 Peshmergas until now, and more than 10,000 Peshmergas have been wounded. Of course, the situation has changed a great deal since then. Now ISIS is isolated in Mosul and Tal Afar and in some other smaller pockets. We recently have increased our cooperation with the Iraqi security forces, and in the operation of liberating Mosul that started on October 17th, Peshmergas liberated additional 500 square kilometers from ISIS and opened passages for the Iraqi security forces to pass through and to reach the outskirts of the city of Mosul, where most of the fighting is actually happening right now. We believe that ISIS is going to be militarily defeated, but certainly not eradicated. To eliminate ISIS and the threat of terrorism, we all have to work together, especially in the future. The responsibility of fighting terrorism will be mainly the responsibility of the intelligence and the security communities as they lose territory. It's important to defeat them militarily because we need to deny them the advantage and the chance to recruit people, to raise funds, and also to attract foreign fighters from across the globe. Right now, we are trying our best to militarily defeat them, but we also understand that to defeat the threat of terrorism, we have to go after the financial resources that are supporting the activities of terrorism. There have to be, in my belief, regulations in the way to deny ISIS and other terrorist organizations to use the social media, which they so easily have access to their sympathizers all around the world. And most importantly, it is very important to fight them ideologically. And this is the responsibility of other Islamic countries, to come up with the right message of Islam, which is a peace-loving message. We cannot allow ISIS and other terrorist organizations to represent themselves as the face of this religion. This is what the situation is as of now. But we also understand that the rise of terrorism is a symptom. It is a product. It's a byproduct of a much bigger problem. And this problem is basically initiated from the political failure, which has led to the economic collapse, to the social disorder, and also to the security vacuum that led way to the rise of these terrorist, radicalist ideologies, which basically what we have today as ISIS. In order to look at the root causes of this problem, we have to fix the political structure. We are engaged very strongly with the Iraqi government to find a better mechanism for the future of our country. We believe that all the atrocities that happened to our people and everything that our people have suffered must not be repeated. And this can only happen through dialogue. We believe that our future depends on the success of these dialogues that we are engaged with at this time. Of course, we need the support of the international community and mainly the United States to help us to reach a sustainable solution to make sure that the future of our people, the next generations, is secured, and also that we will have a stable region. We do have, like every other nation, the right of self-determination, but we are also realistic. We didn't draw the borders, but we are dealing with them. And we believe that with the support of the international community and the success of these dialogues that we're having actually with the rest of the Iraqis, we need to find a mechanism that we can live a peaceful country in the future, and that the nature of our relations with the regime of Iraq is going to be natural and acceptable by all the communities in that country. We know our history. We lived through all these atrocities and the genocide war that unfortunately has not been pleasant and it's not been very far away. This is a very fresh experience in our mind. In order to make sure that all these atrocities are not repeated in the past, we have to reach an agreement. We have to make sure that we have a clear understanding. And usually, this understanding only happens when you have moderate forces to come together and to be able to very frankly discuss the nature of the future relations between Baghdad and Erbil. And this is what we are doing right now. Let me also thank the United States for the tremendous support that they provided to us. The support that this administration provided when they helped us with the airstrikes against this common enemy, and with standing with us in the fight against this terrorist organization. But we also have expectations from the next administration to increase their support militarily and politically, and to stay engaged to make sure that the future of our relations is as secure and as stable as possible. And I'll just stop my remarks right now and be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barzani. Let me start with a question on Mosul. First of all, the operation against Mosul has slowed down because ISIS is putting up a determined fight. In your estimation, how long do you think this is going to last? And second, Mosul has always been a microcosm of Iraq, a very diverse city. And do you think that the Iraqi government has taken the measures to for the after the liberation of Iraq, liberation of Mosul, and if what would you recommend they do?
Well, you're right. Mosul is a very diverse city. If you look at the components that live in Mosul, you have Arabs who are Shias and Sunnis. You have Kurds who are Shias, Sunnis, Yazidis, Shabaks. You have Turkomans who are Shias and Sunnis. You have Christians who are Chaldeans, Assyrians, and Armenians. So you have all this mixture of people with different religious and ethnic backgrounds. In order to have a stable province, as a smaller example of the bigger Iraq, there has to be a political understanding and agreement amongst all these components. We pushed for reaching an agreement even prior to starting the military operation. But it seemed that the military operation had to be done at a certain time, so we are still hoping to develop this agreement parallel to the continuation of the military campaign. It's not just about defeating ISIS militarily, but it's about really helping and working with these other groups to live side by side. It's not easy to expect that everything will go back to prior to 2014. The atrocities committed and the crimes committed against especially the Yazidis and the Christians and the rest of the people, for that matter, are real. The wounds are still very fresh. We cannot ignore what happened. And it's very difficult to expect these people to once again trust each other. So we have to have a mechanism. We have to listen to them and see what they have to say. Any solution, any theoretical solution is not going to succeed. We have to be realistic and really be ready to listen to people and see how and how they are comfortable with and how they are going to live together. This is very important, we believe, for the future of Mosul. So, in short, we don't only have to win the war, but we have to win the peace. And this is by bringing everybody together to agree on a mechanism that everybody is comfortable with.
And how long do you think the operation will last?
It's very difficult to speculate because, as you know, the war in Mosul is very hard. It's very difficult. Now the Iraqi security forces are encountering some very fierce resistance by ISIS. ISIS has been very creative and in the way that they are fighting the Iraqi security forces. They have weaponized drones, and now they, as they called it, the DBEDs. This is the drone-borne improvised explosive devices. They have dug tunnels, networks of tunnels, in fact, inside Mosul and also outside in the first lines of defense where Peshmerga so successfully defeated them. What we found out, the tactics that they were using are very effective in the way that they're defending themselves. And also by launching hundreds of VBIEDs against the incoming forces, the liberating forces, using snipers very effectively. And this is just on the eastern side of Mosul, which is supposed to be an easier part. When you go to the west, to the western bank of the Tigris River, we expect that the fighting is going to be even harder because there are smaller alleys and there are more sympathizers on the other side. So it's very hard really to say when exactly this fight will come to an end. But I have no doubt that eventually they will be defeated. It's just about a matter of time.
talking about the future of Iraq, tell us about a little bit about, should we say, all the other powers that are somehow involved in Iraq, because Iraq has become a country ever since 2003 where the United States, the Iranians, the Turks, you name it, the Saudis, everybody is involved. As you look forward to the future of Iraq, how do you see these actors playing out their own interests and influencing the future of Iraq?
Well, Middle East has been a very dynamic place, and all the neighboring countries have their own agendas, and they're trying to protect their interests and influence in other countries to expand their interest. In fact, we do believe that Iraqi relations with its neighbors should be on the basis of mutual respect, of not interference, and to let the Iraqi people to decide the fate of the politics in the future for this country. So we hope that everybody is respectful of the decisions of the Iraqi people when they make it.
Easier said than done, though, right?
Well, that's true, but this is this is what we can hope for only.
All right, let me take questions, but please, no statements, just a quick question, and if you decide to make a statement, I'll cut you off. But and also, please identify yourself and wait for the microphone. This lady in the middle, please.
Thank you. My name is Lauren Homer, and I recently visited the KRG and was very pleased to be there in July. As you know, the CSA people, the Yazidis and the Turkmen, have proposed a new province that they're calling Upper Mesopotamia that would include the Nineveh Plains, Sinjar, and Tel Afar, and I'm wondering what your administration thinks about that proposal. Thank you.
Well, like I said, I think it's up to the people to decide exactly what the fate of the region should be and what part of the country should be, from. But as the policy of the KRG, we have, in fact, adopted this idea, and we proposed that Sinjar should be a new province for especially those people that live in that area.
Gentlemen over there. Nathan, can you? Please, the microphone.
Oh, there you are. Hi, I'm Jim Hoagland from the Washington Post.
Good to see you.
Welcome to Washington.
Thank you.
Could you expand, at least briefly, on your comment that the incoming administration has offered more support, has said it will offer more support to the Kurds? And what form did it come in? And can you perhaps extrapolate from that and give us your view on how active the Trump administration is likely to be in the Middle East?
Well, unfortunately, I can't speak for the next administration. You know that there is one administration at a time. What I said is that we expect more support from the next administration. So far, from people that we have met, we've only heard encouraging words about the continuation of the American policy to support Kurdistan and Peshmergas.
And so when you say you want more support, what does that entail?
Both military support and political support. We want military support for the Peshmergas to not only stay engaged and play the role they play against ISIS, but also to be prepared for any future challenges. Let me tell you that we don't think that ISIS is the end of terrorism. ISIS can be defeated, but if political structure in Iraq and in the Middle East is not solved, and if there are not new approaches to look at how it should be structured, we do believe that there is a possibility that other terrorist organizations may reappear, as we have seen ISIS as the extension of Al-Qaeda. Before ISIS, we had Al-Qaeda. And then for a while, Al-Qaeda was defeated or was driven out, but then we saw ISIS came back as more even sophisticated. So unless the political reasons that are the root causes for the rise of these radicalist terrorist organizations are addressed properly and solutions are found for these problems, we do believe that it is possible for the rise of additional challenges in the future.
Does this mean that you would like to see some American troops stay?
We certainly love to see Americans engaged very strongly to help stabilize the region. So that would really depend on the decisions of the American people and American administration.
Okay. Nathan, here. Here, in the middle here. The lady.
Thank you. Thank you for helping the refugees in the KRG.
Can you identify yourself first?
Catherine Porter, the Leadership Council for Human Rights. The bloodshed continues. I'm wondering if you might comment on Turkey's intrusion and involvement in the ongoing bloodshed, particularly in light of the Yazidis that we just found out 3,700 more women are in Mosul. What can we do to help them? How are you working with Turkey to mitigate the bloodshed?
Well, thank you. We see this as our duty to help the refugees and the IDPs. And just for your information, KRG hosts 1.8 million IDPs and refugees from the rest of Iraq and also from Syria. The biggest responsibility of taking care of these refugees is actually, KRG has taken it. We do believe that the Iraqi government and the rest of the coalition forces should help us because, look, all these refugees that fled and went to Europe, and billions of dollars are spent to deal with these refugees. Imagine if even a percentage of that funds were provided for the refugees before reaching Europe, they would have taken care of this problem more effectively. So we are hoping that there will be an international response and help for the KRG to provide the necessary needs for the refugees, especially that we are entering winter and it will be much more difficult. We cannot speak, I cannot speak for for Turkey or for anyone else, but we can only tell you that we are engaged with all the players to be supportive in this endeavor, and so far we haven't seen really any challenges from or any let's say opposition from Turkey or any other country to help the refugees.
We have a very large overflow room, so they have sent some questions, so I need, let me relate one or two of them. One is, how do you foresee the international community dealing with the crimes against humanity that have been committed?
Well, we are a living example of the crimes against humanity. We think that the world, unfortunately, has not been very just when it comes to the rights of the Kurdish people. We have been the victim of crimes committed against humanity for the last 100 years. And we think it's just the right time for them to fix the mistakes that were made during the Sykes-Picot Agreement. And until now, unfortunately, we are paying the ultimate price for that. So we certainly believe that all of the world, the international community, should come together and be respectful of the rights of our people, our nation, a right that God has given us, but unfortunately, men prevented us from exercising those rights. So it's time for all of them to acknowledge this injustice and to be ready to fix it.
Another question is, when will the independence referendum be held?
We are engaged with Baghdad about the future relations between Baghdad and Erbil. So a lot of this will depend on the outcomes of the negotiations that we are having, in fact. So we will see what happens, and then appropriate decisions will be made. But referendums basically eventually will be needed, at least for the areas that are called disputed territories, although I personally don't think that they are disputed territories. These are areas that the Kurds have been deported from, and other people have been resettled. But in any case, the Iraqi constitution explains these areas as disputed territories, and the fate and the future of these areas need to be decided by the original inhabitants of those areas, especially after the normalization of the situation, as it's been stipulated in Article 140 of the Iraqi constitution. So that will be held at some point. But right now, we believe it's more important to reach a political agreement with Baghdad about the nature of the future relations between Baghdad and Erbil.
The original inhabitants, how are you going to get them to participate? I mean, they may be all over the place.
Well, that's true, but let me tell you one thing. We are not only asking for the Kurdish people to stay in these areas. The original inhabitants are the people of different origins, different backgrounds, different religious and ethnic backgrounds, in fact. We as the Kurds are very proud, very, very proud to say that we are a tolerant nation. We have many different religions. We have many different ethnic backgrounds who all live in Kurdistan and call Kurdistan home. In fact, it is because of this tolerance that we see many, many people, hundreds of thousands of people from other parts of the country are seeking refuge in Kurdistan because they feel their rights and their religion, the practice of their religion, is well protected. So when you're talking about the normalization of the situation, we are talking about defining a territory which is called Kurdistan. Normalization of the situation based on Article 140 is two things. One, to bring back all the people that have been forcefully deported from those areas, and also compensate people that have been actually replaced, perhaps even against their will, by a systematic policy of the previous regime, under Saddam's regime. The other part of the normalization is really to make changes to the boundaries of those provinces. For instance, Kirkuk. 4 provinces of Kalar, Chamchamal, Kifrian, Toskormatu were detached from the province to shrink the size of the Kurdish population so that it would be easier for the previous regime to change the demography of a much smaller region. So a part of the normalization is really to go back to square one and to make or to undo all of those changes that happened to the administrative boundaries of the province. Once all of this is done, and once people that actually are from those areas go back, then it would be up to them to make decisions about the fate and the future of the region.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Marina.
Marina Ottaway with the Wilson Center. Shortly after the beginning of the Mosul operation, the Peshmerga stopped its advance because it had reached the limit of Kurdish territory, from what I understand. As the war is proving very difficult, as the operation is proving very difficult, are there circumstances where you can envisage the Peshmerga pushing further to help in the liberation of Mosul?
As of now, there is no such agreement. Based on the agreement that we have, there are certain limits where the Peshmergas could go to, and we have reached the destination where the Peshmergas need to be in. And we are hoping that the rest of the Iraqi security forces are able to finish the job and to liberate the city of Mosul. But if, like you said, the circumstances changed, then this is an open dialogue between the leadership of the KRG and Baghdad and the American-led coalition to see what would be the alternative. But right now, there is no plan for Peshmergas to go beyond where they are.
In the middle over there.
My name is Kani Zulam. I'm with the American Kurdish Information Network. Tabakhirati, Washington. If you could list 3 of the most pressing needs of Kurdistan regional government, what would they be? What can the people of Kurdistan do to help you address them? And what can the nations of the world do to help you address them?
Well, you know, we are suffering from the economy. Any international support to help us in Kurdistan to deal with all the challenges that we face is one of the issues. because we are, like I said, we are hosting 1,800,000 refugees and IDPs, and in fact this number is increasing because an additional 80,000 IDPs have fled since the beginning of the operation of Mosul and came to Kurdistan. So the number of IDPs are growing up. In fact, the population of Kurdistan has increased by almost 30%. This is at the time when the oil prices have dropped. This is at the time when, unfortunately, the Iraqi government cut off the budget of Kurdistan. And this is at the time when we are also covering the cost of war against ISIS. So any additional support by the international community to help us and to help us deal with this issue is going to be significantly useful. The other thing is really to help Peshmergas with the heavy equipments and the modern weapons so that they can minimize the casualties that unfortunately they've suffered, and of course to help defeat this or maybe other enemies in the future. And also the third point would be to help the Kurdish people on the political level to help them realize their aspirations and also to support this ongoing negotiations to reach a sustainable, peaceful solution with Baghdad.
So on the on the refugees, I mean, when people talk about the refugee crisis in the region, they always point out to refugees the 3 million in Turkey, the 1 million in Jordan, 1 million plus. But somehow never do people mention the refugees in the KRG. And I understand there's been no outside financial help for that. Why is that, do you think? Why haven't you been able to make your case?
Well, I think we have. Unfortunately, they just haven't listened to us that much and they haven't responded to our calls. But many of the people that have fled from the rest of Iraq and came to Kurdistan are IDPs, internally displaced people. And these are not called refugees. But yes, we do have about 300,000 refugees from Syria. So we were hoping that Baghdad and the rest of the international community would come to our support, to our help. We've asked the United Nations, we've asked all other members, we've asked Europe. But if they don't come, and if they don't want to share some of this responsibility, what do we have to do? Close our doors on these people? No. I think Kurds are very famous for their hospitalities and the support that they've provided for other nationalities and of different backgrounds. And this is what we will continue to do regardless. Well, we are hoping that we are not left alone and it's still not too late because as I said, we have done our part until now, but I'm afraid that when we are unable to continue this support, then those people who are living in camps are unfortunately going to pay the price for it.
Dave Ottaway, also here at the Woodrow Wilson Center. What is the financial situation of the KRG now? Are you getting your oil exports up? Are they increasing? Are you getting funds from Europe? You're getting money from the United States, I think, for the Peshmerga. But what's the general financial situation now of the KRG?
I think I just explained. This is not my field. It's not my portfolio. But as far as I understand, well, we are having problems with our economy. As I said, the price of oil have dropped, and many of the companies that were actually working on developing oil fields, many of them were actually close to where the fightings were taking place, and for security reasons, they abandoned. So hopefully, with the threat of ISIS diminishing, many of these countries will come back, and we are also hoping that there will be an increase in the price of oil. So that will definitely help us. We are very grateful and thankful to the United States for trying to compensate some of this salaries for the Peshmergas. But as you know, these are Peshmergas that have fought for the last 2 years. without even being paid because of the beliefs that they had in their cause and because of their determination. But costs of war are too many. And of course, taking care of these IDPs are also a big responsibility. And then to revive the economy is another responsibility. So we hope that we are not going to be left alone in this. But unfortunately, so far, we don't think that everything is back on the right track. So still, it's a big problem.
Let me take another question from the overflow room. Can you elaborate on the current political crisis between Baghdad and Ankara and Turkey's involvement in Mosul?
Well, let me explain that, when Turkey came into Iraq many years ago, it was because an internal problem of Turkey was exported to our areas. And that was because of the confrontation between Turkey and PKK. Recently, after ISIS came, there was an agreement, actually, with the permission of the Iraqi government, that 3 bases needed to be established, and the Turks would come to train Peshmerga forces as well as the remnants of the Iraqi military and police force in Mosul and volunteers. So 3 bases were actually established. One was in Suleymaniye, the other one was in Soran, the other one was in Bashika. When the mission of the 2 first bases in Suleymaniye and Soran ended, the Turks returned. But the one in Bashika was different because there were volunteers from Mosul and from the neighboring areas that actually were enrolled in that camp for training. And then there was a change in the government of Mosul. The former governor of Mosul was replaced by a new one. Because of the proximity of where that camp was, Turks sent additional troops to protect the camp in that area, which obviously triggered the tension between both Iraq and Turkey. This is a matter that needs to be resolved by Baghdad and Ankara. So it's not really for us to speak on behalf of either one of them, but we certainly hope that they are going to reach a peaceful agreement on this.
Questions?
بخير Serçalan, Çeto Özel, independent researcher. We know that ISIS is an international terrorist organization. So my question would be, what percentage, do you have any data coming from other countries like Turkey, Germany, America, or neighboring country as well?
I think it would be very difficult for anyone to give you a very accurate number. But based on the information that we have collected and based on the analysis that we've had throughout this last couple of years, we believe that about 15 to 20% of ISIS fighters are actually coming from outside.
Sirwan Kajo from Voice of America. Mr. Barzani, I have 2 questions for you. The first one is related to intelligence sharing between your agency and Syrian Kurds who also happen to be effective in the fight against Islamic State, and also intelligence sharing with Iran. Iran recently said that they just foiled an attempt to an ISIS attack inside the country. So what is the level of cooperation between your agency or government, for that matter, and Iran and Syrian Kurds? The second question is about ISIS detainees. Your government, the Kurdish security forces, have arrested hundreds of ISIS members, some of whom are very effective. They were very effective leaders in Iraq. What is the level of how beneficial has that been as far as getting out, gathering intelligence from those folks? Thank you.
Well, with the Syrian Kurds, we've always supported the rights of the Kurdish people in Syria, but we believe that it's up to the Syrian Kurds to come up with a mechanism that is comprehensive and includes all the Kurds and not just one particular group. So our role actually has been to promote the idea of bringing them closer. There have been 2 meetings in Erbil and Duhok, actually 3 meetings in Erbil, 2 and 1 in Duhok, to make sure that all people of different political views will work together, they would, in our belief, would be more effective in fighting ISIS and protecting their areas. So our rule with them is basically the rule of encouragement to make sure that they're going to work together and not to monopolize power or to expand their influence in different ways that perhaps is not acceptable by the rest of the Kurdish people in Syria. In terms of sharing information with other countries, we are an active member and perhaps the most effective force in this fight against ISIS of the international coalition. So we are sharing information with the members of the coalition forces that are with us in this fight. In terms of using this, gathering information from people that have been arrested, yes, we are collecting information, but unfortunately, I cannot share exactly, the level of or the effectivity of this information. But I can tell you that they have been significant in many ways.
Do you also share information with Iran?
I told you we share information with the members of the coalition in this fight against ISIS.
Phil Schrafer, retired international healthcare worker. Mr. Barzani, from what I read at the Wilson Center, you've been an excellent leader in terms of dealing with different Kurdish factions and dealing with internal corruption. What would you say your chief strengths are and your chief weaknesses in this regard?
Well, I think our determination, our resolve, our belief in our cause, our tolerance, our belief in coexistence, democracy, these are our strong points. Our weakness is the lack of sovereignty. We are not a sovereign nation, we are not a sovereign state, so therefore there are many things that we cannot do as we wish.
Let me take a question from the overflow room. Can you comment on the domestic situation, specifically on the relations between the KDP and Goran and PUK on the other side?
We are hoping that, of course, like every other nation, there are internal political differences, and it's very natural. In fact, this is the beauty of democracy, that we don't all think alike. There are differences of views. We have started the campaign of talking to different groups, different political organizations, including the PUK. And in fact, we have no objection to talk to anyone, including Goran. But we have a common goal, and we believe that they all have to come to term in terms of protecting the national interest of the Kurdish people. And there are efforts on the way, actually, to bring everybody together.
Are you suggesting that they're not supporting the national interests of the Kurds?
Well, unfortunately, not everyone thinks the same, and some of them may have other priorities. We think that we are at a stage where we have to put our political narrow interests aside and think more of the interest of our people. And we don't think that everybody is in line with us on this.
But, I mean, the 1990s were a period when you had very serious problems within Kurdistan. Are you worried that you may have a repeat of that?
I hope not. I think, well, let me tell you that when it comes to the national interest, I think even the constituencies of these other political parties, regardless of their views, are all very supportive of the national interest and the national goals of our people. So there are differences, of course, political differences, political interpretations of certain issues, but we certainly hope that by dialogue, by engagement, we can sort out some of these problems.
Question.
Dave Ottaway again from the center. Could you tell us a little bit, in your dialogue with Baghdad, are you finding a growing acceptance from them of an independent Kurdistan? I mean, could you tell us a little bit more about the issues you're discussing with them and whether you feel you're making any progress?
Well, let me first start by saying that we have tremendous respect for Prime Minister Ebadi. We think that he is a man of reason. We think that he is very reasonable and rational. He understands the reality, and he is willing to reach a sustainable solution with the KRG. So this is the reason why we believe that people like him are the ones that we should be talking to in order to make sure that things are not getting out of control, and that we have to reach a solution that is supported by a mechanism, not just on the will of an individual. We have a very good prime minister today, but we didn't have it before him. And there is no guarantee that in the future there is going, we don't know who will come and become the prime minister. So individual decisions are not enough to secure the relationship, whatever the status of that relationship may be between Iraq and Baghdad. That's why we certainly believe that these negotiations are important to define a secure and acceptable relationship between Baghdad and Kurdistan. I'm not going to jump into what may come out of this talks. Leave it for the time and see what will happen.
The fate of the KRG is not just dependent on what happens in Iraq, but also what happens next door in Syria. That is to say, even if ISIS is defeated, then you will still have this huge empty territory east of the Aleppo-Damascus highway. So what do you envisage for Syria? Because clearly what happens in eastern Syria will affect you.
Defeating ISIS is not limited to Iraq. You're absolutely right. And we do believe that in order to defeat ISIS, they have to be defeated both in Iraq and in Syria. And in fact, they are not only in these two countries. They've expanded, and now they're in North Africa. They're in many other places. So to fight ISIS, ISIS needs to be defeated everywhere. Now, in Syria, the situation is a little bit difficult. In Iraq, it is the Iraqi government, it is the KRG, and it's the coalition, and we all have one common enemy, and we are all fighting ISIS. In Syria, unfortunately, because of the complexity of the situation, many of these forces are even fighting each other. And that is really for the future of Syria, for the people of Syria to decide. But certainly, it is in our best interest to encourage everyone to defeat ISIS.
Once Mosul is taken, would you contribute to fighting ISIS in Syria?
I don't think so, because basically our responsibility is to drive ISIS out of our areas, and that's what we have. In fact, if we are not allowed to take part in the operations beyond what is considered to be Iraqi Kurdistan, then I don't think it would be appropriate to expect the Peshmergas to cross into another country.
This is Qasim Ileri with Anadolu Agency. Could you comment on the PKK influence and presence in Sinjar, as it has been a matter of discussion between Turkey and KRG? How are you going to deal with this issue? Thank you.
Well, unfortunately, this is a sensitive topic, and we have been trying to talk to everyone that PKK is respectful and mindful of the rule of the KRG in Sinjar. This is not a territory where they can establish their rule. They have to respect what the KRG needs to do in that area, and it's up to the people of Sinjar to actually run and govern their own areas. So the presence of PKK has complicated the situation, and we hope that they will eventually come to terms and accept that they need to return to their own places and leave Sinjar.
In the back there.
Hello, I'm Patrick Hickey with the U.S. Government Accountability Office, and spent some time looking at our efforts to train and equip both the Peshmerga and the government Iraq forces. In the fight in Mosul, the government Iraq has been making increasing use of popular mobilization forces, primarily Shia militias with greater or lesser degrees of influence or cooperation with the government of Iran. As those forces are now being used in the Mosul operation, are they been in any way complicating your relationship with the government of Iraq? And are they also, is there a plan to use those forces as a a sort of stabilization force in areas that have been cleared around Mosul. And what's your views on that?
Yes. Let me tell you, we are not a part of any coalition against anyone else. In terms of the components, the main components in Iraq, we are not with Sunnis against the Shias or with Shias against the Sunnis. We have respect for all the legal institutions of the Iraqi government, and we understand that just a week ago, Iraq has legalized the PMF. We hope that with this law, they're going to be held accountable for all their behaviors, and that Iraqi government is the government responsible for dealing with PMF. Based on the agreement that we had with the Iraqi government and the American-led coalition, PMF doesn't come to Kurdistan, and they haven't. So basically, the areas where they operate is outside of our reach. All we are saying that we hope that there will be a better understanding between the Shias and the Sunnis, and that every force that goes to some place will be a force that is welcomed by the local communities, so that there will not be further complications of the situation as it happened in the past. So this remains to be seen, and to see how the Iraqi government is going to deal with this issue.
Let me follow up on that, and then ask you to answer the question not as an official from the KRG, but somebody who understands the security situation in Iraq very well. So you have a situation in Tal Afar now where the PMF has essentially surrounded the city. Right? In Tal Afar, you always had the Turkoman Sunnis and Turkoman Shia population. Most of the Shia have left. But a lot of the Turkoman Sunnis have been dire ISIS supporters. So, and now you have that city surrounded by the PMF. So what are you worried about the outcome of this, and what would you like to see there?
You know, the whole point is to prevent retaliation against innocent civilians. This is the idea. In fact, local popular mobilization forces, now if they're local, we believe that there has to be a balance of power. So it cannot be just from one sect that ignore the others. So, you know, Tal Afar is a mixed city. It's almost halfly divided, you know, half Shias and half Sunnis. Now, many of the Sunnis, yes, collaborated with ISIS, but there are many others that are not with ISIS. So eventually, the protection of Tal Afar and many other towns and cities, for that matter, will be the responsibility of the local security forces that are enrolled in this, local forces. So basically, what we hope that everybody will be acting so responsibly that they will not try to retaliate against others, and that the focus of everyone will be to defeat ISIS.
But don't you have an potentially explosive situation where if the PMF will have to take Mosul, Tal Afar?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are always possibilities if things go wrong and out of control, but let's be hopeful that everybody will stay on track and behave according to the plan.
Any other questions? Yes.
Tukherati, Washington. Aramajan from VOA. My question is about a Shia militia which is called Hashdi Shabi. As we know, there are around 40,000 people, and they get support of Iran. Do you think they will be one of the main threats after ISIS for Kurdistan region or not?
A main threat?
Yes.
This will depend on their approach. We hope not. Now that they are a part of the Iraqi government, every action taken by the PMF will be interpreted as the responsibility of the Iraqi government. So we hope that this will not be the case. Of course, there are many challenges in the future that we are uncertain, and we don't know how things will be unfolded, but we have to stay hopeful and believe that there will be a good understanding, and everyone will, like I said, will behave wisely, and that there will not be a threat. We have nothing against them. They should have nothing against us.
One last question here, gentleman in front. Nathan, here.
My name is Rawan Sherzad Akrey, and I'm a Kurdish student at Northern Virginia Community College. Firstly, I would like to welcome you and the Kurdish delegate to Washington, D.C. To continue, I would like to ask you this question. Could we expect that a peaceful agreement will soon be reached between Baghdad and Erbil, primarily the independents? Thank you.
Well, there is peace between us. I mean, we are working and cooperating with each other. I mean, this is for sure. What we are talking is about the shaping of the future relations so that we prevent atrocities, that we prevent bloodshed, that we prevent war. And we are trying to solidify this position, this solidarity, this relationship, and peace and stability in a mechanism that prevents all of these other negative aspects to, in the future. So basically what we are doing right now is to make sure that the future is going to be also stable and secure for our people as well. The rest of it, of course, like I said, the aspirations of our people are very clear, and we think that they have the right to exercise their rights. But that would really, I will leave it up to the time when, that decision is made.
On that note, I really would like to thank you. I have to make one observation. I don't think in all the meetings I've had here that I've chaired, that one person has answered so many questions.
Oh, really?
You were succinct. I mean, you were very, very good, and I really congratulate you.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I
Great.
mean what I said.
Thank you so much.